There is a kindness that heals and another that sickens. The first is born of sound judgment and fortitude, the second of the fear of being rejected. Perhaps you have felt it, that silent tension in your chest when you accept something you don't want, when your word bends so as not to inconvenience anyone and you end up inconveniencing yourself. That is what we call being too kind, and although it may look like a virtue, it is often a refined form of self-abandonment. Marcus Aurelius warned with sobriety, "Let your life be simple and good. Let it not be pulled along by what does not belong to you. A life dragged by the approval of others no longer belongs to you. The price is steep. Resentment, exhaustion, a diffuse sense of betrayal that weighs on every poorly given yes." The Stoic tradition does not condemn kindness, it purifies it. It reminds you that virtue is not a social mask, but an inner choice sustained by the Logos. Being good is not being malleable. Being good is not surrendering your judgment to the murmur of the crowd. Being good is exercising justice, prudence, fortitude, and temperance, even when that discomforts others. Seneca would say it bluntly, "He who always wants to please soon ceases to respect himself." And without self-respect, the help you give becomes a debt. Your giving becomes emotional bookkeeping. The kind gesture turns into a silent bill that ends up being paid in sadness. The dark side of excessive kindness is that it breaks the equation of responsibility. Another decides for you, and you reward yourself for being good, while the soul, able to distinguish virtue from compliance, shrinks. Epictetus taught to separate what depends on you from what does not. Your judgment, your intention, your boundaries depend on you. The opinion of others or the gratitude you expect does not. That is why when you find yourself saying yes with a knot in your throat, remember that authentic consent is not born of fear, but of agreement with reason. If there is no agreement, there is no choice, there is escape. This episode invites you to look directly at that escape, not to blame yourself, but to recover the governance of your life, which begins with ordering your word and your time. We are going to explore why you confuse being kind with being good, why justice begins with you and not with anyone's approval, why the impulse to assent can be a way of avoiding clarity, why speaking briefly and clearly is more compassionate than decorating and postponing, why every yes carries a hidden cost, why anticipating discomfort strengthens the spirit, why your dignity should never be put up for auction, why facts weigh more than promises, why resentment is a warning light and not a destiny, and why ordering your loyalties returns peace to your schedule and to your heart. We are not going to demonize kindness. We are going to give it back its backbone. Kindness that comes from virtue does not dissolve you. It organizes you. It knows how to say no without violence and yes without debt. Imagine today as a small school of everyday dignity. You will enter and exit scenes that invite you to please. You don't need to shout to choose differently. It is enough to take a conscious breath and ask, does this serve my telos, the good I want to build, or does it merely avoid a small conflict? If the answer is the first, go ahead. If it is the second, remember with Epictetus that what disturbs men are not things, but their opinions about things. That opinion can mature in an instant if you stop to think. The pause is sovereignty, and sovereignty begins the moment you no longer obey fear. Virtuous kindness is not shown only with sweetness, but with boundaries. A boundary is not a wall against the other. It is a contour in favor of what is valuable. The field of your life is protected with fences you yourself trace. Those who appreciate you learn to walk within those fences. Those who do not drift away on their own. In both cases, you gain serenity. Do not dramatize the process. Be consistent. The best revenge is not to resemble the one who wronged you, said Marcus Aurelius. We could add, the best proof of love is not to resemble your fear. Scenes may come back to you, favors accepted without desire, jobs sustained out of inertia, conversations avoided, silences that pressed on your chest. Do not run from those images. Look at them as a doctor looks at an X-ray, with calm and precision. The goal is not to blame yourself, but to diagnose where you gave up your judgment. No deep reform begins with aggression, it begins with clarity. And clarity is trained like a muscle of presence in the small things of each day. I propose a maxim: do not negotiate your judgment for immediate peace. The peace you buy by surrendering your judgment is not peace, it is anesthesia, and anesthesia charges interest. Prefer brief discomfort to prolonged confusion. Prefer a clear phrase today to 3 apologies tomorrow. Prefer to appear less kind for a moment than to resemble yourself less for years. The world needs your kindness, not your compliance, and you need your dignity, not everyone's approval. This will be our work, to recover the serene courage to choose well. To achieve it, we will use 3 humble yet powerful tools. The first is observation. At the exact moment someone asks you something, observe your breath, your posture, your automatic impulse. That fraction of a second is a laboratory where your freedom is decided. The second is sober language. Short words that do not humiliate or self-humiliate, that do not promise more than is possible, that do not hide behind excuses. The third is the memory of your ends. To remember each day what deserves your attention so that your yeses are roots and not leaves blown by the wind. Seneca advised reviewing the day at dusk, asking what was done, what should have been done, and what will be done better tomorrow. That small audit strengthens character and prevents the habit of pleasing from catching you off guard. You may fear that if you stop pleasing, you will become harsh. It is an understandable fear when you have lived years asking for permission to exist. But harshness does not come from boundaries. It comes from resentment accumulated by not setting them. True gentleness is that of the tree trunk that knows how to say no to the wind without breaking. Marcus Aurelius suggested treating others with benevolence and at the same time with firmness, like a doctor who heals without flattery. Compassion is not submission. Epictetus seals the teaching with a simple question: if you hand your will to the opinion of others, whose life is it? Recovering the correct answer is the task of this journey. Perhaps today you will not change the world, but you can change the course of your day. One honest decision is worth more than 10 apparent generosities. One timely conversation saves months of wear. One no said with respect avoids a yes that poisons you. And when at the end of the day you close your eyes, you will notice the difference. There will be no pending accounts between your conscience and your voice. That stillness is the fruit of adult kindness, one that was born when you looked at fear with tenderness and asked it to step aside. If you persevere, the time will come when no one demands your compliance, because your very presence teaches the way, and your example becomes a silent form of education. Decide calmly and guard your peace in each small act. Before we begin, I want you to declare your commitment by leaving in the comments: "From today, I do not negotiate my dignity." That phrase will be your reminder that you did not come here to seek approval at any cost, but to recover the right to say yes when you mean it and no when you must. This is the moment to show yourself that your kindness does not depend on silence, but on firmly choosing what honors you. Without further preamble, let's begin. First Stoic lesson: distinguish kindness from compliance. Being good and being compliant are not synonyms, though everyday language confuses them and social praise mixes them into the same phrase. Kindness is born from the choice of virtue. Compliance is born from the fear of losing affection. When you choose virtue, you decide from a stable center. When you comply, you decide from the shifting periphery of others' expectations. Marcus Aurelius expressed it calmly: if something is good, it needs no witnesses. Kindness requires neither applause nor excuses because its origin is interior. Compliance, on the other hand, lives dependent on the external mirror and disguises itself as generosity while it distances you from your own judgment. To distinguish them, observe your body when you say yes. Kindness leaves a trace of lightness. Compliance leaves a trace of tension. Kindness brings order. Compliance fragments you. Kindness may physically tire you, but it leaves you at peace. Compliance saves you from conflict now and indebts you with several later. Seneca warned that the greatest mistake is wanting to please everyone, for that desire turns life into theatre and the soul into an actor without a script. If you find yourself acting just to avoid discomfort, you are no longer choosing the good. You are merely avoiding a discomfort you believe unbearable. Epictetus proposed a simple method. Before acting, ask yourself what depends on you. Your judgment, your intention, your word depend on you. The recognition you will receive does not. If your action seeks what you cannot control, suspect compliance. If it seeks what you can control, you are in the realm of virtue. Practice this test in small scenes: a favor, a task, an invitation. Observe where your judgment leans. If your argument is, so they won't be upset, perhaps you already yielded. If your argument is, because it is just and good, you are on center. Authentic kindness does not avoid truth. It states it with respect. Compliance avoids truth and covers it with syrup. It seems sweeter, but it ends up cloying the relationship. Nothing is more detestable than flattery, writes Seneca, because by flattering we abolish the dignity of the other and our own. Speaking the truth with respect is an act of trust. You trust your judgment and you trust that the other can receive it. To stay silent out of fear is not prudence. It is a tribute to the inner noise that governs you and robs you of clarity. Rehearse short phrases to train the difference. This yes, this no. I can up to here. I need time to think. They are simple, but carved with virtue. You will notice that when they come from kindness, they do not humiliate or hurt. They draw contours. When they come from compliance, they sound like apologies or endless explanations. Keep your attention on the inner tone. If your voice trembles out of eagerness to please, return to your breath and to your judgment. Breathe, choose, speak. Remember that kindness and firmness do not exclude each other. Kindness is firm like the trunk of a healthy tree. Compliance is fragile like a dry branch that bends to avoid breaking and ends up snapping. Marcus Aurelius would invite you to do what is necessary with dignity, without drama. Dignity does not shout, does not accuse, does not beg. It stands. And when it stands, it orders the relationship because it establishes the common ground where both can step without stumbling. There are specific signs that reveal compliance, vague promises, agreements that make you uncomfortable the moment you utter them, silences that weigh like stones. Against these, kindness offers clarity and boundaries. It is not about winning an argument, but about preserving the truth of what is good. If the other resents your clarity, that is useful information. Perhaps the relationship was sustained on your docility, not on respect. Ultimately, distinguishing kindness from compliance is choosing between living outward or inward. Kindness born of virtue allows you to look others in the eye without debt. Compliance, on the other hand, leaves you with the sense that you have mortgaged something essential. You do not need to cancel your tenderness to recover your backbone. You need to remember that the good is not to be negotiated in exchange for applause, and that your peace is worth more than the fear of being liked. Also consider the long-term effect on your identity. When you repeat the pattern of compliance, you carve out a character that later dominates you. You present yourself as the person who is always there, and that label begins to decide for you. The price is subtle. You lose spontaneity, sabotage projects that require deep concentration, postpone rest, forget study. Seneca recommended caring for friendship with oneself because he who cannot be alone ends up as an enemy of his own company. Excessive compliance outside is often a sign of neglect inside. If you remain faithful to your schedules and your purposes, the need to please weakens through sheer saturation of meaning. There is also a spiritual angle to this distinction. Kindness looks to the good, not to praise. Compliance looks to praise, not to the good. Epictetus framed it in terms of freedom. If your peace depends on the gesture of another, that person is your master. It is not a metaphor. You will be subject to their frown or their smile. In contrast, if your peace depends on your judgment, you belong to yourself. And from that belonging it is easier to love, because you do not love from lack, but from the prudent fullness of someone who has put order within. Practice a brief examination at the end of the day. Ask yourself, where was I kind and where compliant? What did I feel in my body before answering? What would I have said if I did not fear disappointing? Write one line of learning without accusing yourself. The purpose is not to set yourself up as an implacable judge, but to train the fine recognition that will allow you to change your gesture in time. Marcus Aurelius practiced this type of review with serenity. His goal was to improve in modesty and justice, not to win a moral contest. Another useful criterion: observe the aftermath. Kindness leaves serene gratitude and rest. Compliance leaves fatigue and repetitive thoughts. If on returning home you find yourself ruminating over the scene, replaying what you said or what you kept silent, perhaps you did not choose rightly. That rumination is the bill for the wrong yes. Pay it with learning, not with guilt. The next day, try a briefer and more honest response. Remember finally that no one can force you to justify your legitimate numbers. Excess explanation is a disguise of guilt. Saying, "I cannot," or "it is not appropriate" in a calm tone is enough. Those who demand an endless account do not seek to understand your reason, but to negotiate your boundary. And negotiating the non-negotiable is the fastest path to self-betrayal. Mature kindness preserves compassion, but does not hand over the keys to its house. In short, distinguish the origin of your gesture, examine its signals in body and mind, look at its fruits in the short and long term, and guard your language so that it is clear and sober. In this way, kindness recovers its dignity, and you recover the freedom to be good without becoming invisible. Second Stoic lesson: justice begins with you. Justice, in the Stoic sense, is not a matter of institutions, but the harmony of the soul with the good. It begins at home. If you deny yourself fair treatment, time to rest, sincerity to say no, respect for your own needs, you will inevitably treat others from a place of disorder. Setting boundaries is not building walls, it is tracing walkable paths. A just boundary offers the other person clarity instead of uncertainty and prevents the seed of resentment. Marcus Aurelius encouraged us to be straight, not straightened. The boundary is the rectitude you give yourself before expecting the world to accommodate you. Imagine your day as a piece of land with plots. Each plot is a real duty: your health, your work, your relationships, your study, your rest. When you say yes to everything that arrives, you end up watering the weeds more than the trees that sustain you. Justice with yourself means prioritizing what keeps the land fertile. It is not selfishness, it is responsibility. Seneca was blunt: no one can give what they do not have. If you strip yourself bare to appear generous, you become a dry spring that waters no one. Just boundaries are communicated without drama. You do not need long speeches. A clear phrase at the right moment prevents months of confusion. Epictetus insisted on the discipline of assent. Do not give your approval to every impression. If a request comes with urgency and flattery, do not rush. If it comes with respect, evaluate whether it fits with your real duties. Justice is not about distributing your time like propaganda. It is about using it according to reason. You may worry that by setting boundaries you will lose affection. It is possible, but what you lose is not affection, it is dependency. A relationship that requires your disorder to survive is not love, it is barter. Justice cleans that barter and leaves what is essential: the freedom to love without manipulation. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best defense is a clear conscience. Sometimes the most useful thing is a timely no. That prevents 3 resentful yeses. Practice a simple gesture. Before answering, check whether you are honoring your basic duties. Have you slept, eaten calmly, completed the essentials of the day? If you are in deficit, do not commit to what is secondary. Justice is not negotiated, it is ordered. When you align your schedule with your conscience, a silent peace appears that others perceive. Those who respect you will understand. Those who are offended were more attached to your compliance than to your person. Justice also demands repairing when you make mistakes. If you said yes and later realized you betrayed yourself, do not prolong the mistake out of fear of seeming inconsistent. Inform, correct, learn. Seneca suggested that the wise man prefers to blush briefly rather than endure long shame. Rectifying in time prevents a minor fault from becoming fraud against yourself. Define your concrete standards. Not everything deserves the same level of commitment. Some requests require an enthusiastic yes, others a limited yes, others a respectful no. Justice is sensitive to context and establishes priorities: family, health, work, study, rest, contemplation. Do not confuse noise with urgency. Epictetus would say there is no obligation to attend to an impression simply because it shouts. Your task is to discern its nature before handing over your energy, just as the archer gauges the wind before releasing the arrow. When everything seems equally important, stop and write. Putting things into words orders the soul. List your real duties for the day and measure each request against that list. Justice is not an emotion, it is a criterion cultivated through careful attention. Those who love you without your boundaries do not love you, they love your absence of contours. Teach by your example that just kindness is worth more than 100 anxious concessions. Remember that justice begins with you, but it does not end with you. By ordering yourself, you help better. Your yes becomes reliable because it comes from truth, and your no becomes respectable because it does not humiliate. Do what you must, whatever happens, could be summed up with Marcus Aurelius. And what you must, often, is to protect the small inner space where every good gesture is born. If you feel guilt for prioritizing yourself, examine its root. Guilt is legitimate when you have harmed, it is not when you chose with discernment. The habit of pleasing confuses kindness with servitude and guilt with responsibility. It dissolves by practicing small acts of justice with yourself. Drinking water on time, pausing before replying to a message, leaving on time even if others stay, closing your laptop when you promise to rest. Over time, your relationships will reorder themselves. Some will draw closer because they discover your presence is clear and kind. Others will drift away because they no longer find the old permission to invade. Both movements are good. They clear the web of dependencies and make space for mature relationships. Your kindness gains depth, your word gains weight, your schedule gains breathing room, and the sense of living in debt is replaced by the quiet pride of having been just. There is another test. Listen to how you speak to yourself after setting a boundary. If you insult yourself inside, it was not justice, it was fear. Justice speaks in a sober and firm tone, even when correcting. Speaking to yourself with respect is part of your duty to yourself. Epictetus insisted that there is no progress without continuous vigilance of inner speech, because the voice with which you name yourself creates the climate in which you act. If you call yourself names, you are not practicing virtue, you are practicing violence against your spirit. Establish rituals that sustain your judgment when emotions rise. A minute of breathing before answering, a short walk, a glass of water, a preset phrase to gain time. These small anchors are not coldness, they are applied sanity. Seneca celebrated simple aids that restore temperance because a tempered soul judges better. If you train this muscle every day, justice ceases to be theory and becomes noble reflex. Finally, remember that setting boundaries is not closing your heart. It is opening it in an ordered way, so that what is good stays and what is destructive does not enter. Justice, the ancients said, is the architecture of the common good. It begins with the inner house. If your walls are firm, your door can be open. That is the paradox of strong kindness. By caring for yourself, you expand your ability to care for others without resentment or pretense. If you ever doubt between pleasing and being just, ask yourself what advice you would give to someone you love. With others, we are often wiser than with ourselves. Apply that same practical benevolence to your own life. Marcus Aurelius, in his diary, reminded himself to live according to the rational nature he had been given. You can write yourself a similar line at dawn and another at nightfall. The whole day thus becomes a school of serene justice. And when you stumble, return to center without drama. Correct, reorder your schedule, continue. In this way, justice begins with you and turns your kindness into a reliable strength. Third Stoic lesson, suspend the impulse to say yes. Between the request and your response lies a world, the world of the pause. That is where your freedom lives. The impulse to say yes is often a learned defense to escape instant discomfort. But every time you yield in that way, you hand your schedule over to the tyranny of the moment. Epictetus proposed halting the mind at the first movement of an impression, observing it before giving assent. If you practice that first halt, the chain breaks. You breathe, you think, you decide. You do not obey the fear of disappointing, you obey your reason. The pause is not coldness, it is respect for the truth of the situation. Ask yourself, is this good, just, necessary? Marcus Aurelius recommended stripping things of what is not essential in order to see their nature. When a request arrives, undress it of its trimmings, someone else's urgency, praise, future promises. Look at the naked fact, time, effort, alignment with your telos. If the fact does not support the yes, do not force it. At first, suspending the impulse feels uncomfortable. You fear you will look bad, that people will seek you out less, that they will call you selfish. This is normal. The identity of the always available one protests when it loses its privileges. Let it protest. You do not owe your life to that character. Seneca would have said that no one is free if obliged to please. Freedom is not ignoring everything. It is being able to choose calmly what truly belongs to you. Train yourself with bridging phrases that buy you the pause. I'll check and get back to you. Thanks for thinking of me. I'll reply tomorrow. I need to look at my schedule before giving you an answer. These are not social tricks. They are exercises in temperance. They return minutes for consulting with yourself, not with fear. In those minutes, feel your body. If the yes arises from anxiety, wait. If it arises from conviction, proceed. Accompany the pause with premeditatio. Imagine the consequences of accepting and of declining. If you accept, what will be displaced? If you decline, what will be preserved? The mind loves clear accounts. When it sees that a yes steals hours of sleep or compromises a higher duty, it understands that the no is an act of care. And when it sees that a yes nourishes your telos and strengthens a healthy bond, it embraces it without resistance. Also, practice the pause in small things, messages, invitations, casual commitments. A kind rule, no yes before 3 breaths. That micro-ritual restores freedom in your nervous system. Epictetus would approve. Training in small things prepares the soul for great ones. If the world speeds up, you slow down enough to see. Urgency loses its spell when you look at it without haste. The impulse to say yes sometimes hides fear of the truth. You save yourself an explanation today only to pay with interest tomorrow. Marcus Aurelius suggested speaking as if washing your hands, brief, clear, without theatrics. The pause helps you find that clean voice. From there you can say no without harshness or yes without debt, and neither will be an escape. There will be those who insist, pressure, manipulate. The pause saves you there too, because it keeps you from reacting. A calm no, repeated once, is worth more than 10 long defenses. Seneca would underline that brevity protects dignity. Your task is not to justify your freedom, but to exercise it with composure. Let silence do its work when insistence looks for cracks. If guilt visits you after pausing, examine its message. Did you cause harm, or did you simply choose? Honest guilt corrects. Neurotic guilt confuses. Be grateful for the warning if harm was done and repair it. If not, be grateful for the clarity and move on. The pause is not a break on your love. It is a filter to keep your love from becoming diluted. Over time, the pause becomes a style and your reputation changes. Those who know you learn that your yes is valuable because it is not automatic, and your no is respectable because it does not humiliate. That reputation protects your time without you needing to raise your voice. Coherence, repeated day after day, builds an invisible border that discourages subtle abuses. Epictetus would put it differently. When your ascent is conscious, the world ceases to drag you along. To sustain the pause, guard your basic energy. Sleep, movement, calm eating, contemplating something beautiful, these seemingly simple actions are the reserve that lets you avoid reacting out of exhaustion. The impulsive yes is more frequent when you are depleted. Temperance is not only moral, it is also ordered physiology. Seneca celebrated moderation because it clears the mind. A clear mind does not give away its schedule just to quiet an inner noise. Use the pause to listen better to the other. Ask what truly matters: deadlines, scope, purpose, real benefits and costs. What seemed urgent sometimes is resolved with a minor adjustment. Other times, by clarifying, you discover it will serve them better to have another profile or a different schedule. The pause, rightly used, improves negotiation because it brings light. Haste, by contrast, clouds it. It is likely that at first you will feel clumsy. Clumsiness is part of learning. Do not let perfectionism sabotage the practice. Marcus Aurelius advised rising each time you fall and returning to the task with good spirit. If today you yielded impulsively, do not insult yourself. Use the error as a record for tomorrow. The only defeat is returning to autopilot without trying again. A valuable resource is to write out your standard responses for recurring contexts. Draft them when you are calm and keep them. When pressure arrives, copy and adapt. This is not coldness, it is foresight. You save yourself guilt-ridden improvisations and honor your judgment. Thus, over time, your pause becomes a private school of applied freedom. Remember to include benevolence. The pause is not a weapon, it is a bridge. It connects you with the other from a clean place. When you say no, you are also saying yes to something that cares for both, the truth of available time and energy. When you say yes, you do so with awareness of its cost and its good. That double care turns your decisions into living lessons for those around you. Finally, I celebrate with you the smallest gesture, a breath before answering. It seems nothing, but it changes the course of a life. In that breath lies the wisdom of centuries. It is not things, but our opinions about things, whispers Epictetus. Do what you must, answers Marcus. Avoid flattery, adds Seneca. Pauses like this, sustained, bring you back to yourself. Before closing, make a simple promise. You will not confirm a commitment without having breathed 3 times and looked at your real schedule. It is a humble promise, but a powerful one. It will remind you that you are responsible for your permission and for your peace. If someone grows impatient with your pause, they are showing you their relationship with your boundaries. Learn from that information without bitterness, and if they thank you for your clarity, recognize that you have planted respect. With every pause, the impulse loses its hold, your voice gains weight, and your life regains its own rhythm. That is the heart of this lesson. Practice it today in small things, and tomorrow you will see how you can sustain the great ones without breaking. Fourth Stoic lesson: Speak clearly and briefly. Parrhesia means saying what is necessary with truth and care for the bond. It is not insolence or coldness, it is cleanliness. When you speak clearly and briefly, you choose reality over embellishment. Excessive kindness hides in explanations that try to buy acceptance, but truth is not for sale, it is offered with respect. Marcus Aurelius urged speaking as one who cannot lie. That image requires precision and sobriety. Clarity is compassionate because it does not postpone the inevitable pain of setting a boundary. The longer you delay, the more you break inside. A simple sentence prevents an emotional debt that later collects with interest. The voice that trembles with fear of displeasing speaks at length, circling around what it wants to say. The voice that arises from judgment speaks briefly because it knows what it says and what it does not say. Seneca reminded us that style is the person. A scattered mind speaks with smoke. A settled mind speaks with calm fire. Clarity does not fight, it states. It does not seek to win, but to understand and to be understood. That is why, when you set a limit, do not add flourishes or invent excuses. Say, I can't. It's not appropriate. This isn't the right time. 3 clean words are worth more than 15 trembling excuses. Speaking clearly and briefly is trained before opening your mouth, in thought. Epictetus insisted on purifying representations. Before answering, clear the scene of assumptions, guilt, and implicit promises. What exactly is being asked? What can you realistically offer? In what time frame and under what conditions? A brief sentence is born of well-formed questions. Clarity is the daughter of precision. If in your mind everything is vague, your tongue will spill that vagueness into paragraphs that solve nothing. By contrast, if you measure the ground, your word fits like an exact key. True brevity does not cut out empathy. Look into the eyes, name what is real, avoid judgments about the other's intention. You can say, I value that you count on me. Today I cannot take this on, or I can help you up to here and at this time. 2 lines are enough. Courtesy does not depend on the number of sentences, but on the honesty of their content. Marcus Aurelius warned against the theatre of virtue. Seeming kind is not the same as being kind. To be kind is to care for the good of both, and for that, clear truth is service. If you feel your voice shortening, breathe. Slow breathing steadies the mind and places each word where it belongs. Rehearse in writing what you will say in recurring situations. It is not rigidity, it is discipline of language. Seneca recommended sober formulas that sustain temperance. Having key phrases is like carrying a tuned instrument. When pressure arrives, you do not improvise out of fear, you perform from lucidity. The other perceives it. A clean phrase generates trust. A rambling speech raises suspicion because it sounds like defense, not truth. Clarity is also listening. Speaking briefly forces you to hear the essence of the other. Ask what matters. Scope, time frame, resources, limits. You avoid the fog where misunderstandings and manipulations thrive. Epictetus would say that listening is accepting what the thing is, not what you would like it to be. If after listening you still doubt, ask for time. Better a conscious delay than a long, confused response that binds you to what you cannot sustain without resentment. Some conversations demand extra firmness. In them, avoid verbs that dilute your decision. Maybe, perhaps, I'll see. Say yes or no, and if you offer a yes, narrow it with precision. Ambiguity is fodder for abuse. Truth defines the playing field and, paradoxically, calms. Marcus Aurelius observed that nature loves simplicity. Imitate it in your speech. Where there is simplicity, there is less room for fantasy and more space for real cooperation. If you regret having been unclear, repair it as soon as possible. A brief repair is another way of speaking briefly. Yesterday I said yes impulsively. I reviewed it and I cannot. I'm sorry, do not add novels. An honest acknowledgement and an early correction are worth more than 20 justifications. Seneca underlined that delay multiplies evils, promptness restores proportion. If the other is offended by your clarity, that fact guides you. If they are grateful, it confirms that the bond prefers truth to useful fiction. Also, mind your tone. The same phrase can be a wall or a bridge. Choose a calm pace, a neutral intonation, and language free of irony. Truth without charity wounds. Charity without truth confuses. Stoic parrhesia knows how to unite both because it seeks the common good, not the discharge of your irritation. If you are upset, wait. Prudent silence is the prelude to clarity. In the end, speaking clearly and briefly is not a communication trick. It is an ethic of reality. It commits you to seek the right word, to honor the truth of your limits, and to respect the other's time. This ethic does not make you less kind. It makes you trustworthy, and being trustworthy is the highest degree of kindness. One who knows what to expect from you can rely on you without fear. Epictetus would add that no one fears one who owns their word, because their word does not change with the wind. Practice today one sentence less, one silence more, one precise boundary. You will see how the peace you defend with your tongue frees your heart to love better. Imagine 3 concrete scenes. At work, you are asked to take on a task that is not yours and would keep you late. Your impulse is to say yes to avoid being the difficult one. Practice the phrase, "I can't take it on today. If we prioritize it for Friday, I can review it." No reproach, no victimhood, just limits and an alternative. In the family, a relative asks for money a 4th time without honoring previous agreements. Avoid sermons and offer clarity. I won't lend to you. If you need different help, we can review options. In a partnership or with a friend, you notice a pattern of subtle belittling. Name it without exaggeration. When you joke that way, I feel diminished. I prefer to keep a respectful dynamic. Few words, all the difference. Train writing as a gym for brevity. Open a journal and condense in 2 lines what worries you today. Reduce adverbs, cut embellishments, keep verbs that signal action. Marcus Aurelius wrote for himself sentences that were life instructions. Do what lies before you with rectitude. Each sentence is a lighthouse. You do not need more light, you need less fog. Before a hard conversation, write out your central idea, then read it aloud and trim it until it sounds firm and fair. That pruning is ethics applied to language. Remember finally that clarity guards the other's dignity because it avoids trapping them in false expectations. When you say what is, you help the other decide with real data. It is a form of adult love. It is adult love and mature responsibility. Speaking clearly and briefly is, in essence, choosing a life without hidden debt, a life where your word holds the same form inside and out. 5th Stoic lesson, calculate the hidden cost. Every yes consumes something that is not renewable. Your living time, your attention, your nervous energy. The hidden cost is what you forfeit when you agree. Misunderstood kindness ignores this accounting and goes into debt with promises that later drain your sleep, your focus, and your joy. Seneca said it with a sharpness that cuts across centuries. It is not that we have little time, but that we waste much. Wasting it is not always empty leisure. Often it is giving it away to sustain others' expectations. Calculating the hidden cost does not make you selfish. It makes you just toward your telos, that which you have chosen to orient your life toward. Imagine you keep a ledger. In one column you note each yes, hours, attention, logistics, emotions you'll have to manage. In the other, you note what you displace by saying yes, rest, study, health, projects that need continuity. Sometimes the exchange is noble, other times it is a silent loss you only notice when the body protests. Marcus Aurelius recommended guarding the mind against distractions that do not serve the work of the good man. That guardianship is an economy of the soul. You prioritize what nourishes the essential. You cut what erodes it. The hidden cost is not only temporal, but also moral. If you say yes to avoid conflict, you pay with future resentment. If you say yes to uphold an image, you pay with a sense of imposture. If you say yes out of fear of losing affection, you pay with dependency. The price is high because it erodes your character. Epictetus taught to look at gain and loss before acting, like a sensible merchant. Ask yourself, what virtue am I cultivating with this yes? What virtue am I neglecting? What true duty am I leaving unpaid? The answer will give you the interest rate of your choice. To see the cost, be concrete. How much real time will it take? What prior and subsequent steps does it demand? What level of attention? What interruptions will it generate? Who will it affect besides you? Calculate calmly and in writing. Do the exercise in a low voice. This will be 2 afternoons. It involves 3 calls, asking for a favor, delaying training. If, even so, the good is greater, go ahead. If not, say no. A conscious decision is worth more than a kind impulse you later regret. Telos functions as a measuring rod. If your purpose is to care for your health, create a work, raise your children, serve well in your job, any yes that erodes that base must pass through a high barrier. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the art of living resembles more a battle than a dance. There are blows, fatigue, temptations to drop your arms. In that ring, each yes brings you closer to or farther from the center. There is no neutrality. That is why the hidden cost must be viewed with the lucidity of a strategist, not with the naivete of someone afraid to displease. There is also the cost of emotional opportunity. When your schedule is filled with soulless commitments, there is no space left for contemplation, unhurried friendship, deep study. Seneca defended reserving impenetrable hours, your own, as a treasure. Do not be ashamed of protecting that treasure. Whoever values you understands that from there your best self is born. Whoever does not understand seeks a resource, not a relationship. The economy of the soul distinguishes between investment and expense. Investing enlarges you, spending dissipates you. A practical tool is the weekly budget of yeses. Define in advance how many extra commitments you will assume and stick to it. If an additional request appears, ask yourself what sacrifice it demands and substitute it on the list. This small mechanism makes the cost transparent and halts self-deception. Epictetus would suggest adding premeditatio, anticipating obstacles, foreseeing annoyance in advance. When you already expect the hassle of a trip, the trap of flattery, or the guilt that will whisper at night, you decide from another place. There are yeses that, once their cost is calculated, become grateful no's. You thank the trust and decline clearly because the price exceeds the benefit. Other yeses, once their cost is explicit, transform into fair agreements, time limits, clear deliverables, conditions of care. Accounting brings justice to the relationship. Marcus Aurelius valued frankness in dealings because it prevents later bitterness. The truth about cost is a form of frankness. Also, mind the cost of maintaining one-sided relationships. If someone crosses boundaries, minimizes your time, or only shows up when they need something, your yes is not an investment, it is a hemorrhage. Add up the months, calculate how many hours you have given to that cycle, and what real fruit it left. If the account is negative, adjust the distance. Hatred is not needed, only arithmetic and benevolence. I wish you well, but I must care for the ground from which I can give something good. On the intimate level, there is another cost, the story you tell yourself about yourself. Each yes that betrays your judgment feeds a story in which you do not matter. Later, you are surprised you do not believe in your own word. Regaining internal credit is slow, but it begins with a single well-done operation. A reasonable no restores confidence more than 100 self-help speeches. Epictetus put it plainly, in what you practice, you become. If you practice impulsive yeses, you become impulsive. If you practice measured decisions, you become measured. To train, keep a record for a week. Each night note 3 choices: the yes that was worth it, the yes that cost more than you imagined, and the no that protected your telos. Observe patterns. Are there times when you tend to give away your time? Are there people before whom you lose judgment? Are there words that hypnotize you like, "Just a moment, you're the only one who can," or "We'll see later"? Design sober responses for those magnets and test them. If you still struggle, calculate in money, not to commodify life, but to make value visible. How much would you pay for 2 hours of deep rest? For a reading that brings order? For a walk that clears your mind? Multiply that by the yeses you gave away this month. The figure does not lie. Seneca, master of the economy of time, would agree. What you give away without judgment never returns the same. Dare to protect it without guilt. Finally, remember that calculating the hidden cost is not closing yourself, it is opening with order. Your yes gains weight because it relinquished something valuable and did so consciously. Your no stops being a barrier and becomes a guardian of the good. Marcus Aurelius would put it another way: do what you must, not what flatters. The most terrible cost is that of a life lost in commitments that pull it away from its true form. You can choose another arithmetic, one that turns your kindness into a force at the service of what really matters. One last practice. Schedule your non-negotiable duties first and treat everything else as variable. That simple order, flipping the priority, reveals costs that previously remained hidden. When the calendar shows your telos, any new request must justify its place. If it cannot, it does not enter. It is not harshness, but conscious design of your day. What is good for you tends to be good for yours. You arrive calmer, you help better, you work with focus and love without resentment because you did not drain yourself paying too much at the wrong counter. When you are too kind, it is not you who decides, it is your fear of rejection, your guilt, and your need for approval that rule. It is waking up each day saying yes while inside you say no, carrying a silent fatigue that no one sees. And if you do nothing, that habit becomes your entire life. That is why subscribing is no minor gesture. It is an act of dignity. Here you will not find pretty phrases to keep pleasing, but stoic reminders and tools to recover your voice, to set boundaries without guilt, and to feel once again that your life is your own. Not subscribing means staying trapped in the snare of pleasing everyone but yourself, continuing to give away your time and your peace in exchange for crumbs of approval. Subscribing means having a weekly refuge where you train clarity, strengthen your character, and remember that being good is not the same as pleasing. If you recognized yourself in these signs, do not ignore it, because the truth is harsh. The habit of saying yes is not broken with good intentions, it is broken with decisions. And this is one of them. Do it now. Subscribe. Because each episode may be precisely that word, that strategy, that teaching that prevents you from betraying yourself again. Your life was not made to please. It was made to be lived with dignity and virtue. 6th Stoic lesson: anticipate discomfort. When you set boundaries, discomfort will appear. Twisted looks, heavy silences, small pangs of guilt, invitations you'll let pass, jokes aimed at you. Anticipating them is half the work. The Stoic premeditatio is not pessimism, it is training. You imagine obstacles in advance so that, when they arrive, they find you steady. If you expect everything to be comfortable, you will betray your judgment at the first pressure. If you accept that there will be roughness, your no becomes serene and your yes freer. Marcus Aurelius wrote upon waking, "Today I will meet intrusive, ungrateful, arrogant people, but we are kin by nature, and no one can harm me if I do not harm myself." That foresight gave him courage to act with rectitude without being surprised by friction. Discomfort is not a sign you are going wrong. Often it is evidence that you have stepped out of the pattern of appeasement. When the other was accustomed to your availability, a new boundary can feel like rejection. Do not respond to that impression. Respond to reality. Reality is that you are learning to live in accordance with your ends, not against anyone. Seneca advised scorning the fevers of opinion. Today they lift you, tomorrow they cast you down. You cannot organize your life on that fluctuation. Anticipate that some will grow cold and others will show greater loyalty. Both reactions are useful. They clear the map of your relationships. To anticipate wisely, turn the annoyances into expected variables. There will be social discomfort. Decide which phrases you will use, what bodily gestures will anchor you, which scenarios push you off center. There will be internal discomfort, guilt, fear, ruminating thoughts. Draft your protocol. Epictetus proposed starting with the small. If you cannot tolerate a disapproving glance in a trifle, how will you withstand it in greater matters? Begin with one small no and hold it. The next day, another. The nerve of firmness strengthens through repetitions, not heroic speeches. Anticipate also the temptation to over-explain. When the other insists, your mind will seek relief by extending the story. If you foresee this, you will catch yourself in time and return to the brief phrase, "Thank you for insisting. My answer remains the same." This is not disrespect, it is an abundance of respect for both. Another's impatience is not your judge. Epictetus defended the autonomy of judgment. If you hand your piece over to insistence, you lose the helm. There will be days when you falter. Anticipate that too. Not to give up, but to avoid dramatizing. Practice is not linear. A bad night, fatigue, an old wound can make you yield. Instead of beating yourself up, record it. Seneca wrote that one can return to rectitude as many times as necessary with modesty. Theatrical guilt only distracts from learning. The discomfort of admitting the stumble is small compared to the cost of perpetuating clumsiness. Foresee that some people will use emotional blackmail. Don't complain later. You've grown so cold after all I did for you. If this arises, remember that love is not negotiated with debts. Your response does not need to enter that accounting. Repeat your boundary with serenity or withdraw from the conversation when it degenerates. Marcus Aurelius, well acquainted with external pressure, reminded himself that no one can force you to hold an opinion you do not want. Your assent is yours. That reminder is an invisible shield. Also anticipate the body. The body has a memory of docility. Shoulders shrinking, throat closing, hands sweating. Rehearse postures of dignity, feet firmly planted, chest broad without aggression, low breathing with real calm. When the body remembers its place, the mind does not panic. Practice your phrases and posture in front of the mirror. It may sound minor, it is decisive. Nonverbal language supports verbal clarity as the base supports the column. There are discomforts that mean growth and others that mean you are tolerating abuse. Learning to distinguish them is another anticipation. The discomfort of the muscle that trains is good. That of the bone that fractures is not. If a relationship requires you to dishonor essential values, you are not paying the price of peace. You are mortgaging your soul. Epictetus would be blunt. Nothing valuable can be asked at the cost of your inner freedom. Anticipate that frontier and guard it quietly. A concrete method. Visualize your week. Mark the likely situations of friction and decide your response today when you are not under pressure. Write 2 phrases for each scenario and keep a copy on your phone. Before a meeting, review them. Marcus Aurelius prepared his spirit with brief meditations. You can prepare your language with simple scripts that remind you who you are when fear tries to hide it. It is also worth anticipating the positive discomfort that follows a good boundary. Not all is tension. Often you will feel relief, greater energy, a sweet stillness. That reward sometimes takes a few minutes because your nervous system is still releasing the old identity. Give it time. The serenity that arrives after clarity is the fuel of perseverance. If you remember it, You will resist better the next attempt to return to the old pattern. Finally, anticipate the horizon. You do not set boundaries to become a wall, but to become a channel. A river without banks floods and destroys. With banks, it fertilizes. Your boundaries do not separate you from the world. They allow you to serve it without losing yourself. Marcus Aurelius conceived it in terms of the hive. What does not serve the hive does not serve the bee. Your peace is useful to the whole. Today's discomfort is an investment that tomorrow will benefit all who depend on your clarity. If you make anticipation a habit, you will see that many situations stop frightening you. Not because the world changes, but because your foresight makes you sober. You watch the wave approach, adjust your body, and cross it. Old anxiety is exchanged for serene vigilance. Epictetus called this guarded prohairesis, your faculty of choice protected by alert attention. When you live this way, discomfort does not dictate your decisions. It only accompanies them as a reasonable toll. And if you ever accuse yourself of coldness for anticipating everything, remember that foresight is not control. No one controls another's response, not even one's own emotion. You control your preparation and your intention. That is enough. The rest is the work of the day with its contingencies. Be grateful for what turns out well, correct what goes awry, and return tomorrow with the same humble spirit. As Marcus Aurelius said, what remains of life, live it according to nature, and nature, when it finds a clear boundary, rests. So, anticipate discomfort and treat it as the cost of entry into the life you want. Do not pay with resentment. Pay with attention, patience, rectitude. The fear of friction shrinks each time you pass through it. After a few weeks, you will notice that what once paralyzed you now awakens you. You have stopped asking permission to exist and have begun to exist responsibly. That is true comfort, not the absence of friction, but the peace of walking along a chosen channel. Seventh Stoic lesson: do not trade your dignity for approval. Your dignity is not a bargaining chip, it is your form. When you hand it over for a smile or applause, you are left barefoot in the world's weather. Approval is a capricious tide. Dignity, on the other hand, is the shore that allows you to remain. Marcus Aurelius knew this when he told himself that nothing has more value than the soul kept pure. To keep it pure does not mean to isolate yourself, but to decide that your worth does not depend on a raised thumb or a furrowed brow, but on your alignment with the good. The need for approval often arises from an old wound. The child who learned that to love was to please, that affection arrived only if he stayed quiet, that another's light mattered more than his own heartbeat. We grow up with that script and carry it into work, friendship, relationships, with the logic of, "Tell me who I am." Epictetus dismantles it with an implacable question. If your peace depends on what another thinks, whose life is it? Recovering the right answer requires daily practice. Each time you trade your judgment for belonging, you empty yourself. Each time you choose the good, even if it displeases, you fill yourself. Not negotiating dignity does not make you arrogant. Arrogance feeds on comparison. Dignity is nourished by truth. The dignified person can receive criticism and examine it without collapsing, because their root is not in pleasing, but in doing good. Seneca warned that nothing is more miserable than the one who depends on rumor to know if they lived well that day. Whoever lives by rumor never rests. Dignity, on the other hand, permits the quiet rest of the one who can say at night, "Today I did not betray myself." How is it practiced? First, with clear thresholds. There are things you will not do to please, period. You will not lie to look better. You will not laugh at a contempt disguised as a joke. You will not accept a degrading deal to access a place that is not yours. These thresholds need no sign or speech. They need coherence. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best way to defend yourself is to be. Be what you say you are. Someone who honors their word, who guards their time, who does not buy approval with guilty silences. Second, with an honest look at your hunger. Approval works like sugar. It gives spikes and crashes. Notice when you crave it. after an achievement, before a difficult conversation, when you feel insecure. Do not blame yourself for needing it. Recognize the signal and choose a more solid nourishment, the inner recognition of having done what is right. It is less noisy, but more nourishing. Change the currency with which you buy your peace, from another's coin to your own coin, which you always carry with you. Third, with practices of affectionate honesty. You do not need to collect enemies to stop trading your dignity. You need to learn to say "not this" without hate, and "this yes" without flattery. Dignity does not compete with benevolence, it guides it. It is possible to deny a request that diminishes you while thanking the trust. It is possible to withdraw from a hurtful dynamic without staging a moral tribunal. Seneca recommends avoiding company that worsens your soul. Not out of disdain, but out of care. There will be subtle tests, a complicit laugh at an injustice, a convenient omission, a photograph that demands an intimate surrender for a few more likes. Temptation whispers that it is nothing, that everyone does it. But your dignity is not measured in centimeters, it is measured in direction. Half a degree of steady deviation leaves you far from your north. Return to the shape of the good each time the world offers you shine without substance. Harsher tests will also come. Sometimes you will defend your dignity and lose a place, an invitation, a favor. It hurts. Do not romanticize it. Acknowledge the grief and remain. The loss reveals the kind of bond you had. If belonging required you to yield what is essential, it was not your place. Epictetus would insist that you prefer to lose anything except your inner governance. Everything else can be rebuilt. Inner freedom, once pawned, takes years to redeem. If you discover that you have traded your dignity, do not condemn yourself. Repair. Repair begins with a truth spoken in time. This was not right in me. If necessary, apologize, correct your course, and assume the cost without theatrics. Dignity is not immaculate, it is resilient. It wrinkles, falls, rises again. Each beginning cleans the dust accumulated by fear of not pleasing. Do not confuse dignity with wounded pride. Pride drives you not to yield out of stubbornness. Dignity invites you to yield when it is just, and to resist when it is necessary. Sometimes approval will be deserved and must be received with gratitude. Sometimes rejection will be the natural consequence of an honest choice. In both cases, your center does not move. That steadiness is the gift you give yourself and others. No one has to guess which version of you will arrive today, because your compass does not depend on the weather. In the end, the opposite of trading your dignity is not living against everyone, but living face to face with the truth. If the price of a smile is your peace, it is too high. If the price of an open door is your complicit silence, it is exorbitant. If the price of belonging is the renunciation of your form, do not pay. The world does not need more friendly masks. It needs people with faces, capable of saying yes and no from a clean place. Your kindness, when born from that place, ceases to be disguise and becomes a presence that sets things in order. Eighth Stoic lesson: observe facts, not promises. Promises are easy, facts carry weight. When you live chasing words that soothe you, you hand your rudder over to what someone says they will do tomorrow. When you live attentive to what actually happens, you reclaim jurisdiction over your life. The Stoics did not despise language, but they subjected it to reality. What is, what is not, is not. Marcus Aurelius advised looking at things from within, stripping them of rhetoric, to see their substance. In relationships, in work and in projects, what remains is the deed, not the speech. Observing facts is not coldness or lack of faith, it is love of truth. The one who truly loves you does not need to swear it constantly. They do what is right and, if they fail, repair without theater. The one who is not ready to respect you promises much and delivers little. Seneca recommended judging actions, not speeches. If someone tells you they will change but keeps crossing the same line, do not argue with their promise, adjust the distance. If you promise something and do not fulfill it, do not excuse yourself. Correct. Self-deception feeds on promises because they sustain the illusion that tomorrow will solve what we avoid today. Epictetus explains it with the discipline of assent. Do not grant your approval to a representation just because it is pleasant. Ask yourself, what is actually happening? What can I verify? What patterns emerge when I observe without embellishment? A pattern is worth more than a solemn oath. If actions keep repeating the opposite of what is said, you are facing a fact, not a misunderstanding. Applying this lesson requires patience. Evidence takes time to form, and the rush to decide can lead us to injustice. But patience does not mean endless credulity. Define a reasonable threshold and stick to it. At work, look at deadlines met, quality, and willingness to learn. In friendship, real availability, coherence, and respect for your limits. In partnership, how conflicts are navigated and how calm is restored. A promise is a seed. A fact is a fruit. Looking at facts also means looking at yourself. How many times do you promise yourself something and fail to keep it? How many times do you say, "I'll start Monday," just to calm yourself down? Dignity begins with not lying to yourself. Marcus Aurelius held himself to account each night with gentle severity. Practice the same. Write down what you promise yourself and review whether it happened. If it did not, do not insult yourself. Adjust your method, your environment, your schedule, or your company. The truth of facts frees you from self-deception and pointless guilt. There is tenderness in this approach. When you observe, you stop demanding that others be perfect or that you be a machine. You look at what is, value small progress, name setbacks with sobriety. Seneca advised avoiding excessive anger with others because we too are fragile. Observing facts is noticing quiet advances, a respected boundary, a timely apology, a less harsh conversation. It is not about auditing coldly, but about honoring the concrete reality where love becomes reliable. To sustain this discipline, simplify criteria. Define 2 or 3 indicators for each key relationship or project. If they are met, you persevere. If not, you reevaluate. In friendship, reciprocity, trust, and shared joy. In work, reliability, clarity, and continuous improvement. In your personal practice, consistency, calm, and honesty. Epictetus would agree, a few rules, well practiced, are worth more than libraries of self-justification. The promise that does not become habit is theatre. Observing facts does not make you a heartless judge, it makes you a guardian of your peace. When you stop arguing with stories, the theatre of manipulation dissipates. If someone keeps saying they will change, but the facts do not change, stop investing your hope there. Do not condemn them, but do not condemn yourself. Shift your investment. Take your time to fertile places. Marcus Aurelius loved the image of the hive. What does not serve the hive does not serve the bee. If a bond consumes your honey and offers no real flowers, your task is to leave. Also distinguish between promises aimed at the common good and promises that seduce your vanity. Sometimes you commit because the role of savior flatters you. That is not love of fact, but love of image. Observing facts cuts through the fantasy. You are not indispensable everywhere, and no one is saved alone. Seneca warned against commitments taken out of a desire to please because they betray justice. If your yes is born of wanting to appear, examine it. Perhaps the most just fact is a no. In daily life, use questions that bring light. What happened? When? With what consequences? What was done afterward? Avoid adjectives that inflame without clarifying and grand promises as substitutes for small steps. Epictetus would say, philosophy is learning to love what happens when you have done what you should. Do what you should. Observe, decide, act, re-evaluate. Do not promise a heroic version of yourself. Create humble habits that do the work even when no one is watching. When offered beautiful promises, be thankful and ask for simple facts, a calendar, a first step, a review date. If that bothers them, you already have a fact. The person prefers fantasy to reality. If they accept and follow through, you also have a fact. There is goodwill and structure. Marcus Aurelius preferred what endures over what shines. The shine of a promise dazzles for a while. The light of a fact guides an entire path. Observing facts has an unexpected effect. It makes you more compassionate. When you yourself decide to live in the truth of what you do, you understand how difficult it is to change. A promise ceases to be a magic contract and becomes a direction that needs support. You help differently. You do not ask for grand declarations. You offer concrete support. You do not demand theatrical fidelities. You ask for real steps. You do not feel betrayed by every stumble. You watch the trend. Compassion understood this way is firm and kind. To end, remember that this approach is not cynicism. The cynic ridicules promises because he believes in nothing. The Stoic honors them when they are embodied and lets them go when they only take up space. Between denying the word and idolizing it, choose the third way. Verify it. That verification protects your joy. In a world saturated with speeches, your serenity will be rare because it decides from facts. Let your yes follow the truth and your no defend it. In this way, the dark side of being too kind loses its hold on your destiny. Ninth Stoic lesson: repair resentment in time. Resentment is a red light on the dashboard of the soul. It warns you that a boundary was crossed or an essential agreement was forgotten. Ignoring it is like driving at night with the warning light on until the engine burns out. Listening to it in time, on the other hand, prevents costly damage. The Stoics do not deny emotion. They put it at the service of reason. Epictetus taught to observe the impression that arrives and ask whether it deserves assent. Resentment deserves attention, not obedience. It tells you that something must be said, rearranged, or ended. Grudge is resentment sealed inside. When you postpone the necessary conversation, the pain solidifies and turns into chronic reproach. Seneca warned that what is not corrected in time becomes habit. And the habit of silencing what hurts creates silent debts that eventually get collected in clumsy forms: sarcasm, cold distance, explosions. Repairing early is a courtesy to both. It saves you from poisoning yourself and prevents the other from being surprised by a storm they never saw coming. To repair, first name precisely what happened. On Tuesday, when you did X, I felt Y. My boundary is Z. Marcus Aurelius recommended speaking with sobriety without accusing intentions, describing facts. Sobriety prevents the conversation from becoming a tribunal. If you stick to description, the other can understand without feeling wholly condemned. If you judge their heart, defense will be automatic and the real point of adjustment will be lost. Second, choose the moment. Do not repair at the peak of emotion. Breathe, write, let the body calm down. Calm does not kill the force of the message, it sharpens it. Saying it the same day or the next prevents the accumulation that resentment thrives on. Seneca proposed daily reviews to cleanse the day. Do it for yourself. Night is a poor counselor for unresolved matters. Do not sleep embracing fermenting sentences. Third, offer a concrete way forward. What you need to change, what the new agreement is, what consequence there will be if it repeats. Epictetus would insist on what is controllable. You ask for what depends on the other and declare what you will do if the pattern continues. That way you are not threatening, you are informing. Repairing is not humiliating or punishing. It is restoring the channel through which the relationship can flow without mud. If the other recognizes and corrects, let go of the rope. Do not turn memory of the error into a weapon. Repairing is also forgiving, releasing the debt when there is amendment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that we all make mistakes driven by ignorance or fear. If you see real work, accompany it. If you see theater, return to facts. Adjust the distance without hatred. If you were the one who crossed the boundary, repair promptly. Apologize without a novel. Make amends if possible. Learn. Nothing strengthens trust like a mistake well repaired. Seneca would say the wise prefer brief blush over long shame. If you find it hard, examine your pride. Perhaps you are obsessed with being right. Pride saves cheap apologies, but gifts broken relationships. Dignity, on the other hand, asks forgiveness with a clear voice and moves on. Some resentments reveal misordered loyalties. You are hurt because it is always you who yields, because your time does not count, because you stayed silent for years. Repair here is not solved with a scheduling tweak, but with a rewriting of priorities. Order your loyalties, virtue, health, real duties, then the rest. If a bond demands you sacrifice the first to preserve its shape, it is not healthy, it is dependency. Repair by changing the architecture, not just straightening a crooked frame. Do not confuse repairing with convincing. Sometimes the other does not want to see, cannot, or it does not suit them. Your task is not to win a trial, it is to cleanse your conscience. You say what is necessary, listen to what must be heard, and act according to your judgment. Marcus Aurelius reminded that you can live well even among those who do not follow reason, as long as you follow it. Repair and move on. There is also silent repair, withdrawing respectfully when there is no common ground left. It is not revenge, it is hygiene of the soul. If every attempt to talk ends in disdain or mockery, your presence no longer helps. Epictetus would advise using the door without theatrics. Resentment loses fuel when you choose the right distance and guard your peace without making your exit a show. Intimately, repair with yourself. Sometimes the resentment you think you have toward another is with yourself for betraying you. You said yes where you wanted to say no. You forced yourself to be silent out of fear. You accepted disrespect. Write it down. Apologize to your own conscience and commit to a concrete boundary. Self-betrayal repaired is a seed of strength. Repairing in time gives you lightness back. Kindness ceases to be hidden bookkeeping and becomes free offering. The best revenge is not to resemble the one who harmed you, wrote Marcus Aurelius. We might add, the best repair is not to repeat the harm to yourself. Speaking before rusting is a form of love. Setting a boundary without yelling is another. Letting go of what does not change, another still. Make a ritual. At the end of the day, note if something hurt that deserves a conversation. Decide how and when to say it. The next day, follow through. If you fail, do not tear yourself apart. Try again. Consistency turns repair into a way of life. And when repair becomes a way of life, resentment stops ruling and turns into a reliable messenger that helps you maintain the dignity of the bond and your own. Thus, the dark side of being too kind, saying yes while breaking inside, loses its nourishment and you regain your voice. 10th Stoic lesson, order your loyalties. Ordering your loyalties is like drawing the map of your life with indelible ink. If you do not do it, others will draw it for you with pencil and move the routes whenever it suits them. The highest loyalty is to virtue, justice, prudence, courage, and temperance. From there, the others fall into place: health, family, work, study, friendship, and rest. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that nothing contrary to rational nature can be good for a human being. Translated into the everyday, no commitment that forces you to betray your judgment can be called good. If you honor virtue first, every decision finds its place. If you honor approval first, every decision loses its center and leaves you adrift. Excessive kindness confuses loyalties. It makes you loyal to someone else's whim before your own purpose. Today you say yes to avoid discomfort. Tomorrow you postpone your rest. The next day you fail your children or your work. In the end, you fail yourself. Seneca warned that he who has no port to sail to will find no favorable wind. Your loyalties are that port. If you write down each morning what you truly owe yourself, you will see clearly which requests to honor and which to decline without guilt. It is not about placing people below your goals. It is about serving people better by first caring for what makes you reliable and present. Order begins with the small. Loyalty to your sleep when the time for rest comes, to your body when it asks for water and movement, to your mind when it calls for silence to think, to your work when it demands focus without distracting screens, to your relationships when they need your full presence. Epictetus suggested reviewing whether what you do now aligns with what you say you want. If it does not, adjust. Loyalty is not a vague feeling. It is a sequence of consistent acts that, added together, carve out character. If you repeat coherent acts, your identity strengthens. If you repeat concessions, your identity becomes a fog. There will be conflicts between legitimate loyalties. That is part of mature life. Then justice acts as judge. Which duty weighs more here and now? Sometimes health requires priority. Sometimes a given word. Sometimes a sick child. Sometimes the work that sustains the household. Marcus Aurelius invites us to look at the nature of each thing and its specific weight. The hierarchy is not rigid, it is reasonable and situational. What must not happen is for the need to please to sneak into the room and disguise itself as duty. If the choice responds to fear of displeasing, you are no longer choosing by virtue, you are choosing by unease. When you order your loyalties, a quiet freedom appears. You no longer choose to please, you choose to serve the good. That freedom brings calm. Those around you know what to expect, and you stop carrying an impossible emotional ledger. The best revenge is not to resemble the one who harmed you, wrote Marcus Aurelius. We might add, the best fidelity is not to resemble your version that trades away the essential just to belong. If your compass always points to virtue, the roads may twist, but the north remains. That reduces noise, orders the schedule, and clears the heart. Ordering also means redefining closeness. You will love some people better from a prudent distance because their constant presence endangers the priorities that guard your peace. It is not contempt, it is hygiene of the soul. Seneca advised avoiding company that worsens you. Sometimes new agreements suffice, different schedules, less immediacy. Other times, a quiet retreat is required. Loyalty to your form of the good does not expel anyone from the world. It simply stops giving the keys to your inner house to those who do not care for what is inside. It is useful to write a private letter of loyalties, a page where you declare simply what you will not renounce. Read it every week until you know it by heart. Epictetus would say that repetition engraves doctrine into the proheresis. When pressure comes, that text will return you to yourself. In it may live simple commitments. Sleep enough. Do not lie. Do not accept tasks that sabotage your deep work. Keep 1 hour of daily study. Protect a walk with your children. Say no without adornments when a request erodes your peace. They are not banners for others. They are reminders for your conscience. A common obstacle is guilt. You think prioritizing your telos hurts others. Guilt is legitimate when you cause harm, not when you choose with sound judgment. If your no protects a greater good, it is an act of justice. Seneca distinguished between the favor that strengthens and the one that corrupts. The first requires limits and truth. The second buys silence. If your yeses make people better, you are on the right track. If your yeses create dependency, reconsider. Loyalty to the common good begins with not being complicit in anyone's self-deception, not even your own. Defending your channel protects others from the lie of a yes that will later be charged with resentment. Another obstacle is flattery. Few disguises confuse more than praise that invites you to betray yourself. Without you, this won't happen. Only you can. I trust your generosity. Be grateful and return to order, schedule, energy, higher duties. Marcus Aurelius protected himself from vanity by remembering his fleeting condition. You can protect yourself by remembering that love does not require you to deny yourself. If a request needs you to abandon the essential to keep the image of being kind, it is not love. It is a trade in appearances. In the end, ordering your loyalties restores proportion to your day and firmness to your yes. You no longer live at the mercy of promises and expectations. You live at the sober rhythm of truth. Kindness becomes mature because it arises from a heart with channels. And when you fail, because you will fail, order offers you a way back. Recognize, repair, and reposition. Marcus Aurelius closed his nights with gratitude and examination. Do the same. What you order today will be tomorrow's peace. What you disorder today will be tomorrow's struggle. Choose the center well, and the rest will find its place. To sustain order in practice, decide on a simple criterion of prioritization. First, the non-negotiable, virtue, health, real duties. Then the important, finally, the accessory. Place the essential on the calendar before the urgent. If something tries to displace the non-negotiable, ask yourself what higher good your no protects. Epictetus taught to weigh gain and loss before acting. Apply it coolly. What do I gain, and what do I lose if I yield? What do I gain, and what do I lose if I hold the boundary? When the analysis is honest, the answer matures. Hardness is not needed. Clarity is. Add a weekly ritual, the review of loyalties. Write what you guarded well, what you abandoned, and what you will adjust. Be kind and demanding at once. Demanding without kindness suffocates. Kindness without demand lulls you to sleep. Seneca practiced examination of conscience to improve. Marcus Aurelius spoke of serving the hive. Your order is service to the whole, because a centered life distributes its good better. The world benefits when you do not give your time away to confusion. The kindness that does not betray itself. You have reached the end of this journey, and perhaps you feel something paradoxical. We have not invited you to harden yourself, but to care more tenderly for what sustains you. The dark side of being too kind is not goodness, it is self-abandonment. Today you have seen the outline of that shadow and the sober way to cross it. Distinguishing kindness from complacency, practicing justice with yourself, pausing the impulse to say yes, speaking clearly and briefly, calculating the hidden cost, anticipating discomfort, not negotiating dignity, looking at facts instead of promises, repairing resentment in time, and ordering your loyalties. It is not a decalogue to display, it is a practice to live. Marcus Aurelius would write that it is enough to do what lies before you with rectitude. That is the essence. The rest is noise that dissipates when you preserve your form. Imagine your life as a house with open windows and firm foundations. Kindness, rightly understood, opens the windows so that air circulates. Complacency tears out bricks so that other people's wills may fit. A house that gives away its foundations collapses in silence. That is why, while listening to this episode, you may have recalled scenes where you gave too much and others where you hid behind polite excuses. You do not need to judge yourself harshly, you need to look with clarity. Seneca proposed the honest examination of the day to learn without torment. Do the same. Name one concrete situation, decide on one small adjustment, and today fulfill one clean sentence where before you tangled yourself. Dignity is not a suit for special occasions. It is the skin of your presence. When you sell it for approval, you are left naked before the first wind. Epictetus would sum it up with his favorite question: if your peace depends on the opinion of others, whose life is it? Every boundary you uphold with serenity answers, it is mine, and from me I can love better. You do not need to become a wall, you need to become a channel. A river without banks overflows. With banks, it fertilizes. Your boundaries do not block love, they direct it. Perhaps you are wondering where to begin tomorrow. Begin with what depends on you and is within reach of your hand. Before opening the screen, remember your telos in one written line. During the day, breathe 3 times before every commitment. If you promised something that now seems unjust, repair it in time. If someone crosses a boundary, speak clearly and briefly. If flattery tries to buy your judgment, return to the order you have chosen, and at night write down 2 lines, where you were good and where you were complacent. That humble record will make you freer than any motivational speech. The person who fears disappointing believes that external peace will buy inner peace. But the peace purchased with self-betrayal carries interest, resentment, exhaustion, painful silence. The peace we invite you to today is another, the one born when your word and your conscience coincide. Marcus Aurelius said that nothing gives you more peace than acting in accordance with your nature. Your rational nature asks for agreement with truth. Your human heart asks for love without debt. There is no contradiction. Love without debt is the love offered from a true yes or an honest no. Perhaps after practicing, some will take offense. That is fine. The other's reaction reveals the kind of bond you had. If belonging required you not to exist, that was not love. Let them go with benevolence and without billboard announcements. Others, on the other hand, will thank you for your clarity and stay. With you, they will build fairer agreements. As Seneca reminds us, true friendship loves the virtue of the friend. Your change will be a natural filter that separates demands from real affection. Kindness with a backbone also requires patience with yourself. There will be clumsy days and impulsive responses. Do not use error to feed guilt. Use it to adjust the method. Epictetus insisted that progress comes from continuous exercises, not sporadic illuminations. That is why we propose small, repeatable rituals, reviewing the schedule, breathing, writing, giving thanks, correcting. Small acts repeated become firm ground. Perhaps you carry a childhood story where you learned to be loved by keeping silent. Honor that child who survived with what he had. Today, you can offer him another option, a voice that does not ask permission to exist. When you say no with respect, you are saying yes to that child. When you speak without adornments, you are healing an old wound. When you order your loyalties, you are building a house where he can finally rest. And now, the explicit invitation. If this episode gave you language, courage, and a method to stop negotiating your peace, subscribe to the podcast. It is not a small gesture, it is a declaration of dignity. Each week you will receive simple, stoic reminders and exercises to uphold your boundaries, expand your clarity, and cultivate kindness that does not betray itself. Subscribing is committing yourself to practice, not perfection. It is building, step by step, that life in which your yes has roots and your no has a voice. We do not promise to save you from friction, because friction is part of the human condition. We promise to accompany you with precise words and useful silence, so that friction does not decide for you. We will share brief meditations, daily exercises, and reflections that restore proportion. Sometimes it will be a phrase from Marcus, a piece of advice from Seneca, or a question from Epictetus. Sometimes it will be a simple image to order your day. It will always be a call to choose what depends on you. If you decide not to subscribe, let it not be out of inertia. Choose with judgment here as well. Ask yourself whether you need companionship or whether you already have a discipline that sustains you. If you do, we wish you a good journey and clarity. If you do not, and this episode struck a precise chord, take the step and join. Each reminder will be a knock on the door, so you do not get lost in the old habit of pleasing. Before we say goodbye, return to an image. You are a craftsman caring for his finest tool, attention. Wherever you place it, something will grow. If you give it away to applause, anxiety will grow. If you invest it in the good, serenity will grow. Cultivate your garden without haste and with firmness. When noise arrives, remember, it is not things, but opinions. You can choose the opinion that gives you strength and let pass the one that robs your day. Thank you for listening. Thank you for daring to look at the dark side of kindness and recover its light. If this message served you, share it with someone who needs it most. And subscribe right now to receive the next episode on your favorite platform. May the coming week find you with one simple rule written in the palm of your hand. Be good without appeasing, speak clearly without wounding, set boundaries without fear, and love without debt. There lies the peace that cannot be bought or sold. To begin tomorrow, when you subscribe, you will receive a 3-step routine. Write your purpose upon waking, pause for 3 breaths before responding, and review your day at night. Your voice is essential here. Every reflection strengthens and elevates our community, reflecting the true value of each individual and contributing to our shared Stoic identity. The reflection that receives the most support will be set as the standard of this community of Stoic minds, a community that does not flee from pain but walks through it with courage, with wisdom, with honor. We will see each other in our next gathering at Stoicism for Winners, where we will continue exploring the riches of Stoic wisdom applied to modern life. Now, take the opportunity to deepen your Stoic practice with new recommended podcast sessions. Follow us so you don't miss any reflection that could help you at just the moment when everything feels overwhelming. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we publish episodes designed to accompany you when life feels heavy, when it's hard to stay calm, when you need a word to remind you who you are. Not following us is to risk missing exactly that lesson that could bring back the peace you have been seeking. Until we meet again, remember, you are the sole owner of your perception, the creator of your peace, and the warrior of your own battle. This is the legacy of Stoicism, the art of being invincible.